Nothing brings back old memories like food, toys, clothes, and anything else from the time you grew up in. What are the things that bring out the inner child with 80s kids? This list starts with a product that was part drink, part fire hose. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 things that instantly prove you grew up in the 80s. 25. Squeezits. Were you one of those 80s kids who drank Squeezits? Made by the General Mills Company and first released in 1985, they combined a bunch of fun stuff into one product. You had a great tasting drink in flavors such as Chucklin' Cherry and Grumpy Grape. There was also the bottle design featuring different faces that reflected the strong flavors. Plus, there was the best part, where you squeeze the contents of the bottle into your mouth. Squeezits were satisfying. But were they healthy? Not really, though we sure had fun drinking them. Now, this happened mostly in the 90s, but for me, I used to take the lid, remember you twist it, it was almost that shape. I used to put it in my mouth and pretend it was a mouth guard, and I played Guts. Who remembers Nickelodeon Guts? Yeah. So, that's my personal Squeeze-It story. 24. Cabbage Patch Kids. Even people who didn't grow up in the 80s know about Cabbage Patch Kids. These wholesome dolls, or freaky dolls depending on your point of view, brought the traditional image of babies growing up from Cabbage Patches to life. There was a dark side to the franchise too. Folks were fighting over them in toy shops, and then Garbage Pail Kids were introduced in the mid-80s. These were the Cabbage Patch Kids' edgier cousins, made by a different company. To be a true Cabbage Patch 80s kid, however, you had to know about the books, which sent the characters on some wild adventures, and are collector's items today. 23. Cootie Catchers. You may remember this origami paper thing as a cootie catcher, which is funny because catching cooties wasn't its main purpose. It was actually a fortune teller. You chose one of the different colored or numbered sections, then read out someone's fortune to predict their future. This 80s icon looks pretty childish, but hey, trying to use it to catch bugs in your hair is also pretty childish, so. Did you really want to catch? I thought you didn't want to catch cooties. I thought that was the whole point. Maybe the catcher caught like ghosts, like the ghost catchers and go. Oh. I never called them that. I always called them fortune tellers. 22. Jell-O Pudding Pop. They came out of the freezer, but they weren't solid. They were a pudding, but also a popsicle. What am I talking about? Jell-O Pudding Pops, of course. They became a thing in 1981 and were a popular product for the Kraft Company until 2004. Combining pudding mix with milk and extreme cold created a dessert that was tasty and creamy. They came in chocolate and vanilla flavors and are still fondly remembered. Though their spokesman, not so much. 21. The Snorks. The Smurfs were big in the 80s, but they had competition from the Snorks. This cartoon was set under the sea with the word snork being short for snorkel. The characters in the Snorks had tubes on the top of their heads that made them look cute and distinctive. The show was made by Hanna-Barbera Productions, who are already famous for the Flintstones and Yogi Bear. They also produced the Smurfs, so the company really had the cartoon market covered. That series is better remembered, but the Snorks did okay. It ran for 4 seasons, and among the cast was Frank Welker, an 80s legend who also voiced Fred in Scooby-Doo and Megatron in Transformers. He's done so much stuff. If you're watching, hello, Frank. You're not watching. I'm kidding. 20. Shoulder pads. Shoulder pads, I don't have any. I don't know why I did that, but they're an established part of the fashion scene. But when did they first capture people's imaginations? That's right, the 80s, or else they wouldn't be on this list. At least in terms of female fashion. The male side of the market had a shoulder pad boom a few decades earlier. When we think of shoulder pads now, we think of outrageous 80s fashion as shown in popular soap operas at the time, like Dynasty. People who grew up in the 80s definitely have a special place for these pads in their hearts. 19. Puffy stickers. 3D stickers may not sound very cool in the 21st century, but back in the 80s, they were a big deal. Puffy stickers became highly collectible, with designs including googly-eyed animals, cosmic stars, and characters from franchises like My Little Pony. Soft and colorful, the stickers flew off the shelves and into people's homes. Where did you stick them? Well, everywhere and anywhere, from school books to wardrobe doors. Puffy stickers are still available, but they really hit their retail sweet spot in the 80s. 18. Like father, like son. The media got serious about drugs in the 80s, with tough messages about addiction and abuse targeted at families through their TV screens. Like Father, Like Son, also known as I Learned It by Watching You, was an iconic PSA, or public service announcement, from 1987. The simple yet powerful scene shows an argument between dad and son where the parent confronts the child over his drug use. It's then revealed that the father is an addict, and the kid was simply copying his behavior. This very direct and shocking story was a heck of a thing to put in people's homes at the time. Another slogan you may remember was, "Just say no." First Lady Nancy Reagan was involved in this campaign, and it changed the way people saw drug talking forever. 17. Jungle Gym Playground. Exercising was never more exciting than with jungle gyms. Kids of the 80s had hours of fun climbing the crazy-looking domes, swinging off the monkey bars, and sliding down the slides. They also had plenty of time in the emergency room because, well, this was old-school playtime at its best. Or worst. Forget the comfortable playgrounds of today with their floors covered in soft, natural material. All that stood between you and a mishap were metal bars and your own reflexes. Falling onto a hard floor was easily done. Maybe you have lasting injury from those times, and, well, that would definitely prove you grew up in the 80s. I broke my arm. Story time. I was jumping from uneven bars to the side of the monkey bar. So my jean jacket went up, and metal and denim don't really go well together, and I slipped and fell and broke my arm. 16. Garfield Crazy. Garfield landed at just the right time. Created by Jim Davis in the late 70s, this little cat, big cat, made a big impact in the 80s. There was just something about a sarcastic feline and the era of greed is good that went well together. Either way, kids enjoyed the colorful characters and humor of Garfield, so naturally, the merchandise was a big hit. You could get plush toys, things to stick in car windows, and books which put the stories all in one place, and the phones, the Garfield phones. There's also a fun crossover fact with classic 80s cartoon The Real Ghostbusters. The Garfield cartoon series starred Lorenzo Music, who also voiced Bill Murray's character Peter Venkman in the cartoon version. When they made the live-action Garfield movie in 2004, well, guess who they asked to do the voice? Bill Murray. Way to do a job, Sop guys. 15. Hands Across America. The 80s were a great time for inspiring young people. Worthy causes, such as Hands Across America, led to publicity drives and greater awareness of burning social issues. Hands Across America happened in 1986 and focused on issues with homelessness and the lack of food. When they said, Hands Across America, they weren't kidding. People literally joined hands all the way from New York to California, a distance of almost 3,000 miles. It's estimated that around 5 million pairs of hands were involved. T-shirts were printed to celebrate the awesome achievement, and it's safe to assume that many kids of the 80s have one somewhere in their closet. 14. Hostess Ding-Dongs. Get your mind out of the gutter. It's weird how packaging can make a difference to a product. Take the Hostess Ding-Dong, for example. These were eaten and enjoyed in the 80s, but a big selling point about them was that they came in a foil wrapper. Surely, the chocolatey, creamy nature of the ding-dong would be enough no matter what packaging it came in. However, customers were disappointed in the early 90s when the snacks were rolled out in plastic packs instead of foil. Feedback reveals people thought ding-dongs tasted better and fresher under the old system. If you're one of the folks complaining, then chances are you grew up in the 80s. 13. Hostess Fruit Pies. When fruit pies became portable, the consumers of America went wild. The Hostess Brands company, makers of the iconic Twinkie and other products, brought the delicious, comforting taste of apple, cherry, and lemon to kids' lunchboxes. These fruit pies had been around for decades, and the fact that they were still a major thing in the 80s shows just how great they are. The pie filling could leak out of the pastry pretty easily, but at least they weren't scalding children with fruit as hot as a volcano. McDonald's original apple pie? I'm looking at you. 12. Book It with Pizza Hut. How do you get children to read? In the 80s, you did it with pizza. Pizza Hut ran a program called Book It, where you read stuff every month and received gold stars as a reward. It went deeper and tastier than that, though. When enough gold stars were collected, you got a free personal pan pizza. It began in 1984, and the powerful connection between literacy and mozzarella continues today. Probably best, though, not to eat and read, as you don't want greasy finger marks all over the pages. 11. Trapper Keeper. Too cool for school? If you were, then you probably owned a Trapper Keeper. It's best described as a super binder, combining a typical 3-ring design with folders and a Velcro flap. That homework isn't going anywhere, much as you'd probably like it to. It was invented in the late 70s, but became an essential item in the 80s. Sure, it's convenient scrolling through all your assignments and messages on your smartphone or tablet, yet for sheer hands-on excitement, the Trapper Keeper was a must-have for students in the 80s. I never have. 10. NES Zapper. The height of 80s gaming used to be shooting computer-animated ducks on your TV. Duck Hunt is a famous Nintendo game where you used a plastic gun called a zapper to target innocent creatures. The zapper detected the ducks through a light sensor, giving kids many happy hours of mayhem. Or cheating. Don't lie, you know you put it against the TV and did it. Don't lie, I know you did. Duck Hunt, released in 1984, was a bestseller for the classic Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. Video games are still violent in the 21st century. However, playing Duck Hunt and seeing that dog pop up laughing with a couple of dead ducks in its paws, weirdly shocking by today's standards. 9. Mousercise. Big corporations were arguably more caring in the 80s. Look at Disney, who used to teach kids how to exercise on their TV channel. Subscribers could work out to Mousercise alongside Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, and other favorites from the House of Mouse. The idea was to show young people the basics of keeping fit, and audiences loved it. People who grew up in the 80s probably miss Mousercise like crazy. You just don't get the same rush from something like Peloton. 8. Strawberry Shortcake dolls. Dolls that smell like strawberry shortcake? Yeah, this was a thing in the 80s. First released in 1979 by Kenner, Strawberry Shortcake dolls became a hit during the next decade. You could buy Strawberry Shortcake herself, together with Blueberry Muffin, Orange Blossom, and other collectible characters, each with their own scent. The selling point for the dolls was, of course, the smell, which Kenner created by infusing the plastic with fragrance compounds. These smells lasted for years, hopefully taking the edge off any bacteria which formed over the decades. Bonus fact, Kenner also produced the original Star Wars action figures, another release that will chime with people who grew up in the 80s. 7. The Clapper. Switching a light on and off by clapping isn't a big deal these days. In the 80s, however, it was the stuff of science fiction. So when the Clapper was released in 1984, children were desperate to buy one and started applauding. You could use it for lights and general appliances, bringing kids joy and giving adults a headache. The product was designed by Carlisle R. Stevens and Dale E. Reamer, which actually is not a bad name for a gadget designer. D.E. Reamer? Dreamer? Anyway, what people remember the most about the Clapper is the advertisement created by marketing man Joe Padot. It had a jingle that stayed in people's minds long after the last clap. Clap on, clap off, the Clapper. I still remember that. 6. Station wagon back seat. Station wagons had lots of space in the back for kids to sit during long car journeys. While this vehicle had space, there was one thing it didn't have. Seatbelts. Now that's not to say the station wagon was belt-free. You had them if you needed them. But remember, these were the days before rigorous road safety measures. Seatbelts were fitted in cars as standard in the US in the late 60s, however the rules weren't strictly enforced until 1984. Growing up during that period meant potentially dangerous rides to toy stores and vacation spots. 5. Glowworm. One of the most iconic toys of the 80s was Glowworm. This friendly character and his friends had light-up faces, which was a big novelty. Kids who were scared of the dark were never alone if they had Glowworm. He not only slept with them, he wore a nightgown and a nightcap to boost the bedtime vibes. The makers of the toy Play School found great success combining a cuddly worm with the old idea of a children's nightlight. Glowworm is still available to buy, although I have to say the glowing face isn't so cute with a bunch of dirt and grime on it. 4. Pop Rocks and Soda. There's an image from the 80s that strikes fear into the hearts of many people born in this decade. a poor boy who made the tragic mistake of drinking soda and eating Pop Rocks. This popping candy was very popular, pun intended. However, by mixing volatile candy with fizzy soft drinks, you had a recipe for disaster. Can you believe this kid died from a lethal cocktail of Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola? What's that? You can't? Oh, well, I'm not surprised, because it was all made up in the first place. File this story under Urban Myths of the 80s. 3. Saloon doors. What's the connection between the adult film industry and saloon doors, like the kind you'd see in westerns? It beats me, but video rental stores in the 80s loved them. I guess the idea was that the adult section of the store was like the Wild West. Whatever the reasoning, it just made the area more eye-catching for under 18s who wanted to look at the, let's call them, mature movie titles. Also, isn't a saloon door really easy to get through? Shouldn't they have put in a proper security door to keep the adult tapes away from prying eyes? I guess it's better than the beads? I don't know. 2. Speak and Spell. Here's a nostalgic image that the 80s people will instantly recognize. Speak and Spell by Texas Instruments, yes, the calculator people, was first created in the 70s and went on to be a household name in the 80s. It looks pretty basic now, but back then, it was very cool. A weird robot voice would say a word and you'd have to type it out on a keyboard. Getting the spelling right and hearing the machine say, correct, gave you a feeling that, let me tell you, was awesome. The old Speak and Spell was an 80s icon, but it received a major boost when it met another iconic figure, namely E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Sales of the learning product must have spiked after Steven Spielberg included it in his classic film. 1. Tupperware. Another fascinating fact about the 80s is that stuff from years back had a resurgence of interest. Take Tupperware, for example. The plastic containers that kept your food fresh were in demand in the 80s. Tupperware parties took on a whole new flavor, complete with the fashions and music of the time. Then, there were the foods of the 80s. Tupperware found itself storing everything from apricot chicken to French bread pizza. Oh, I haven't had that in so long. Those containers never had it so good. Now, I'm sure all you 80s kids here in the viewing audience have identified yourselves by now. And I hope I've given you a fun trip to a bygone era, but if you're still wanting some more goodness from the 80s, and guess what? I got a quick question for you. Which child star of the 80s made a big comeback with the Oscar-winning movie Everything Everywhere All at Once? Was it A, Jerry O'Connell, B, Corey Feldman, C, Sean Astin, or D, Ke Huy Quan? Tell us your answer in the comments. Now, the 80s was a world-changing decade. However, I know a lot of other things that'll turn your world upside down. Check out our video all about that right here. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, social medias, List 25's and mine, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you soon here for a whole new list. Next List 25 time, next List 25, nope, that was Batman from the 60s, never mind.